Our gospel lesson this morning is from the 5th chapter of John, verses 1 through 9. After this, there was a festival of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now in Jerusalem, by the sheep gate, there is a pool, called in Hebrew Beth Zatha, which has 5 porticos. In these lay many invalids, blind, lame, and paralyzed. One man was there who had been ill for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and knew he had been there a long time, he said to him, "Do you want to be made well?" The sick man answered him, "Sir, I have no one to put me into the pool when the water is stirred up, and while I am making my way, someone else steps down ahead of me." Jesus said to him, "Stand up, take your mat, and walk." At once the man was made well, and he took up his mat and began to walk. This is the word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Please pray with me for a moment. Lord, I thank you for this day, for the opportunity for us to gather, to hear your word, to have hope, to believe and know that you are God and you are our God. Bless this time that we have, and I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts will be acceptable to you, for you are our rock, our Redeemer. You are the one who leads us through the waters. Amen. You all know my love for water. I've learned long since that being away from water for too long is almost as problematic for the health of my soul and spirit as being too long away from music. So it was with great joy and a deep sigh of relief that I've discovered on the FSU campus a stream and accompanying path close enough to my home to fit nicely into my walks. Though the attractiveness of some portions of it is marred by dead grasses, tree limbs, and stones tossed up on the bank. That quiet little stream must at times become a raging torrent. Clearly, God has troubled that water. Wouldn't be the first time. There once was that pool in Jerusalem that exhibited strange and mysterious phenomena. Every now and then, the water would stir. For no apparent reason, the smooth surface began to ripple. It was believed that when God troubled the water that way, the first person into the water would be healed. Many invalids stationed themselves, sometimes with a helper, in the porticos that surrounded the pools and waited, hoped, prayed that this time they'd be the first one in the water. They would be healed. The man in John's gospel had been waiting, hoping, fruitlessly praying for 38 years until the day he learned that the God who healed by troubling the waters could also heal through a gentle touch of Jesus' hand. God used water while helping the people of Israel obtain freedom. After generations of slavery, they'd left Egypt in triumph. They'd been led and protected by a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. But now they were trapped. Behind them, Pharaoh's armies. Ahead, the waters of the Reed or the Red Sea. No way out, they thought. But they soon learned that water was no barrier. They didn't even have to wade in it. God parted the waters for them, and they walked across on dry ground. Only after they were safely through did God trouble those waters, causing nothing but trouble and destruction for the armies of Pharaoh. A generation later, the Israelites came to the Jordan River, the last boundary between them and the Promised Land. Again, God parted the waters for them. Again, the people of Israel crossed on dry ground. God didn't trouble those waters at all, didn't need to. God simply removed the barrier between them and the new life of freedom. Wade in the Water is an African American spiritual, a song of hope and promise, of defiance and determination for the millions who crossed a great water when brought to this country in chains, then sold in slave markets. The water that played such a key role in those old-time Bible stories inspired and encouraged those slaves. More than the hope that healing might come someday through a miraculous troubling of water was the knowledge that those Israelites had escaped their slavery. The song repeatedly emphasizes how they got away from their oppressors when God and Moses led them through the water, how they crossed the water of the Jordan to find freedom in their promised land. Wade in the Water did more than just raise hope through biblical storytelling. With those words, the Underground Railroad gave slaves information critical to escape attempts, letting them know that their way to freedom would begin with water. Wading would hide their scent from dogs sent on their trail. A boat, if they could get one, would take them fast and far. Wade in the water, wade in the water, children, wade in the water. The music has its own power. The words of the refrain give a command, but the notes wail with an urgent plea, or perhaps a desperate cry. It's an enduring cry. To this day, that song gives voice to a deep yearning for a better life, a deeper, truer freedom, a more full, more complete equality. In short, it gives voice to everything that recent protests have been demanding. Our waters are troubled. Realities to which we have been blind are being brought into the light as our eyes are opened to experiences unheard of in our own experience, almost unimaginable to us. But we're learning realities painfully real and all too normal for others. Perhaps God is troubling the waters of our complacency, our ignorance of the depth and extent of the discrimination, the challenges, the injustice and inequality people of color still face. The dream of freedom and equalities so precious to us has been diminished by racism. Our nation has been sickened too long by that demon. Perhaps if we get into the water of understanding quickly enough, if we as individuals and as a country are willing to wade into difficult, painful issues, if we're willing to confess the sin of racism and tell God we don't want to be sick anymore, then perhaps our country can finally be healed. Amen.